The hotel bar was loud, but my daughter-in-law's voice carried right over me, like I wasn't even there. Lauren DeVere held court at our corner table, her perfectly manicured hands gesturing dramatically as she regaled her influencer friends with stories of her latest real estate conquests. I sat nursing my whiskey, feeling invisible despite being surrounded by my own family. And then I told the seller, "Honey, this market waits for no one." Lauren laughed, her voice cutting through the ambient noise. "You have to strike while the iron's hot, you know?" Her friends giggled and nodded, hanging on every word. My son Miles sat beside her, scrolling through his phone with the glazed expression he'd perfected over the years. 10-year-old Lucas, my grandson, fidgeted in his chair, occasionally glancing at me with those observant eyes that seemed to see everything the adults missed. I cleared my throat softly, hoping to join the conversation. "Speaking of real estate, I remember when your grandmother and I bought our first—" "Oh my God, Frank," Lauren interrupted, not even looking at me. "Could you be a dear and grab some extra napkins from the bar? I think we're going to need them." She turned back to her friends without waiting for my response. "Sorry, girls, where were we? Oh yes, the downtown property." Heat rose in my cheeks as I stood up, feeling every bit of my 62 years. The humiliation stung, but I'd grown accustomed to Lauren's casual dismissals over the past few years. Since my wife Margaret had passed, Lauren had gradually positioned herself as the family's social coordinator, and somehow that had translated into treating me like hired help. As I walked toward the bar, I heard Lauren's voice behind me. "Frank's such a sweetheart. Always happy to help out. It's like having our own personal assistant, isn't it, Miles?" The laughter that followed felt like needles in my back. Ravi Varick, the young bartender, looked up as I approached. He was a sharp kid, probably in his late 20s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I'd chatted with him on previous visits and learned he was studying law part-time while working at the hotel. "Extra napkins?" he asked quietly, already reaching for them. "Please," I said, trying to keep the embarrassment out of my voice. As Ravi handed me the napkins, he also slipped me my pack of cigarettes. I blinked in confusion. I hadn't given them to him. "I think you dropped these," he said, his voice carefully neutral. But his eyes held something else, something urgent. I felt a small piece of paper tucked under the cigarette pack. Glancing around to make sure no one was watching, I unfolded it quickly. In neat handwriting, it read, "Leave through the service door, now." My heart rate spiked. I looked up at Ravi, but he was already serving another customer, his face professionally blank. What could he possibly know that I didn't? I tucked the cigarettes and note into my jacket pocket and headed back toward the table, but Lauren's voice stopped me in my tracks. "Honestly, sometimes I think Frank forgets he's not the head of the household anymore," she was saying to her friend Serena. "It's sweet, really, but someone needs to make the real decisions, you know? Miles is too nice to put his foot down." "What kind of decisions?" Serena asked, leaning forward conspiratorially. Lauren glanced around, then lowered her voice just enough to seem secretive while ensuring it would carry. "Well, let's just say some living arrangements might need to change soon. For everyone's safety and well-being, of course." A chill ran through me. Living arrangements? I thought of my modest apartment, the one Margaret and I had shared for 15 years, the one that held all our memories. What was Lauren planning? Instead of returning to the table, I quietly made my way toward the back of the bar. The service door was tucked away behind a partition, nearly invisible to regular patrons. As I approached it, I could still hear Lauren's voice carrying across the room. "The HOA meeting is next week," she was saying. "I've been preparing for months. Sometimes you have to make tough choices for the greater good." I pushed through the service door and found myself in a narrow corridor lined with storage rooms and employee lockers. The sudden quiet was jarring after the noise of the bar. I leaned against the wall, trying to process what I'd just heard. My phone buzzed. A text from Lauren appeared in our family group chat. "A great night out with the family, Zaksham blessed Hasher family time." Below it was a photo of their table, carefully cropped to exclude me entirely. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the image. Miles, Lauren, Lucas, and her friends all smiling at the camera. It was as if I'd never been there at all. Another text appeared, this one from an unknown number. "Be careful, you weren't meant to see tonight." R. Ravi. Somehow, the bartender had known something was going to happen. But what, and how? I made my way out through the service exit, emerging into the cool night air of the hotel's loading dock. The contrast between the warm, crowded bar and the empty, echoing space was stark. I walked slowly toward my car, my mind racing. At home in my apartment, I sat in Margaret's old chair and stared at the family photos lining the mantelpiece. There was our wedding day, Miles as a baby, his graduation, his wedding to Lauren. In the early photos, Lauren had seemed genuinely happy to be part of our family. When had that changed? When had I become the enemy? I noticed something I'd missed earlier, a calendar reminder on my phone for next week, HOA board vote, 7 p.m. I didn't remember adding that reminder. Lauren must have put it there during one of her visits, probably when she was helping me organize my schedule. An HOA board vote. Living arrangements? Lauren's months of preparation. The pieces were starting to form a picture, and I didn't like what I was seeing. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Carmen Ruiz's name appeared on the screen. Carmen had been Margaret's closest friend and was now the HR director at the hotel where I'd worked as an engineer before retiring. She was one of the few people who still treated me with genuine respect. "Frank, I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all, Carmen. What's on your mind?" "I was just wondering, have you been having any issues with property management lately, or your HOA?" The question was oddly specific. "Why do you ask?" "It's probably nothing, but I heard through the grapevine that someone's been asking questions about tenant rights and primary occupancy rules. I thought you should know." "Someone from my building?" "I'm not sure. But Frank, if anyone ever tries to pressure you into signing documents or changing your living situation, you call me first, okay? There are protections in place for people in your situation." "My situation?" Carmen paused. "Widowed seniors with family members who might have financial motivations. I've seen it before. Just promise me you'll be careful." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking. Lauren's comment about living arrangements, the mysterious HOA vote, Carmen's warning about family members with financial motivations. I thought about Margaret, how she'd always been the one to handle our legal documents and important decisions. After she passed, I'd been so grateful when Lauren offered to help with paperwork and administrative tasks. Had I been too trusting? Had I signed something I shouldn't have? Tomorrow, I decided I would start asking questions, and I would be very careful about the answers I found. The next morning brought an unwelcome phone call from Lauren. "Frank, I hope you're feeling better today. You seemed a little tired last night." Tired. As if my early departure had been due to fatigue rather than humiliation. "I'm fine, Lauren. What can I do for you?" "Well, Miles and I were hoping you could swing by this afternoon. We're having a little get-together for some of my business partners, and the guest bathroom has been acting up. You know how handy you are with those things." The casual assumption that I would drop everything to fix their plumbing rankled, but I found myself agreeing. Maybe it would give me a chance to observe Lauren more closely, to figure out what she was really planning. Their townhouse was in one of the city's more upscale neighborhoods, a far cry from my modest apartment building. Lauren had made sure everyone knew about the upgrade when they'd moved in 2 years ago, posting endless photos on social media with captions about leveling up and living our best life. I arrived to find the house buzzing with activity. Lauren's influencer friends were scattered throughout the living room, ring lights and phone cameras capturing every angle of what appeared to be some kind of product showcase. Lauren herself was in full performance mode, her voice carrying that artificial enthusiasm I'd come to recognize. "Frank, perfect timing," she called out as I entered. "The bathroom situation is getting desperate. Could you work your magic?" She gestured toward the guest bathroom with the same casual authority she'd used at the bar. Several of her friends glanced up from their phones, taking in my appearance, the older man in work clothes, clearly there to provide manual labor. "Of course," I said quietly. "You're such a lifesaver. Miles is upstairs editing content, but he'll be down later. Oh, and try to keep the noise down. We're filming some really important stuff today." I made my way to the bathroom, toolbox in hand. The acting up turned out to be a simple issue with the toilet's float mechanism, a 5-minute fix that hardly required my expertise, but as I worked, I could hear Lauren's voice drifting from the living room. So important to have reliable people in your life, you know? People who are just happy to help out and don't need all the credit or attention. "That's so true," one of her friends replied. "It's like having a support system that just works in the background." Exactly. Some people are natural leaders, and others are natural helpers. There's nothing wrong with either role, as long as everyone knows their place. The casual condescension in her voice made my jaw clench. Natural helpers, people who know their place. Was that how she saw me? How she'd always seen me? I finished the repair and was washing my hands when Lucas appeared in the doorway. "Hi, Grandpa Frank," he said softly. "Mom said you were fixing stuff." "Just a small problem with the toilet, buddy. All done now." Lucas nodded, but he didn't leave. Instead, he fidgeted with the doorframe, clearly wanting to say something. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Why do you always stand in the kitchen when you come over?" he asked suddenly. "You look, I don't know, sad?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't realized Lucas had been paying attention to my body language, but kids often notice things adults missed. I'm not sad, Lucas. Just thinking about things. Mom says you're going to move soon, to a place that's better for old people. A sudden chill spread through me. Did she say when? After some meeting next week, she said it would be better for everyone. Before I could respond, Lauren's voice cut through the house. Lucas, come here, sweetie. I need you for this next video. Lucas gave me one last concerned look before running off. I stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink edge as the implications of what he'd said sank in. Lauren wasn't just planning something. She was already telling Lucas it was a done deal. Whatever was happening at that HOA meeting, she was confident about the outcome. I gathered my tools and headed back to the living room. Lauren was in the middle of filming, her phone mounted on a tripod as she demonstrated some kind of skincare routine. She held up a hand when she saw me, indicating I should wait. And that's why self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. You have to put yourself first sometimes, even if other people don't understand, even if they think you're being mean or inconsiderate. You know what's best for your life. The words felt loaded with meaning beyond skincare advice. When she finished filming, she turned to me with a bright smile. All fixed? Yes, just a minor adjustment needed. You're amazing. Oh, before you go, I have one tiny little favor to ask. She reached for a folder on the coffee table. My insurance agent needs me to update some paperwork, and since you're listed as an emergency contact on a few things, I need your signature. Super boring stuff, but you know how these companies are about their forms. She pulled out a document and handed it to me along with a pen. Just sign at the bottom there. The paper was several pages long, dense with legal language. I started to read it, but Lauren immediately launched into a story about her latest business deal, her voice designed to distract. So, this client calls me at 7 in the morning, right? 7. Can you believe it? And she's like, oh, Lauren, I need to see 3 houses today or I'm going to lose my mind. And I'm thinking, honey, the only thing you're going to lose is me as your agent if you keep this up. I tried to focus on the document, but the legal terminology was confusing, and Lauren's chatter made it hard to concentrate. I caught fragments, something about temporary occupancy and primary residence status, but the full meaning was unclear. Frank? Lauren's voice cut through my concentration. Everything okay? It's just a standard form. Miles appeared at the top of the stairs, his laptop under his arm. Hey, Dad, Lauren said you were here? Just signing some insurance paperwork, I said, still trying to read. Oh, that stuff is so boring, Miles said, coming down the stairs. I signed mine yesterday without even reading it. These companies just want signatures on file for everything. The casual dismissal from my own son stung. When had Miles become so willing to sign documents without reading them? When had he started taking Lauren's word for everything? I looked down at the signature line, pen poised. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Lauren stood beside me, her smile patient, but her eyes watchful. Is there a problem? She asked sweetly. I just like to read things thoroughly before I sign them. Of course. Take all the time you need. It's just that the insurance agent is waiting for this, and if we don't get it back today, it might delay our coverage update. The pressure was subtle but unmistakable. I glanced at Miles, who was already absorbed in his laptop, clearly expecting me to just sign and be done with it. Lauren's friends were packing up their equipment, and the whole room felt like it was waiting for me to finish this minor administrative task so everyone could move on. I signed the document. Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren said, immediately whisking the papers away and tucking them back into her folder. You're the best, Frank. As I gathered my tools to leave, I overheard Lauren on her phone in the kitchen. Yes, I have the signature now. No, he didn't ask any questions. Everything's on track for next week. The conversation stopped when she noticed me in the doorway. Frank, I didn't see you there. All set? Yes, I'm heading out now. Drive safe, and thanks again for everything. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a serious mistake. The document I'd signed, the phone conversation, Lucas's comment about me moving, it all felt connected in a way that made my stomach churn. The next day, I found myself in the parking lot of Lucas's school, waiting for dismissal time. I wasn't sure why I'd come. Maybe I just needed to see him, to make sure he was okay despite whatever turmoil was brewing at home. When Lucas emerged from the building, his teacher, Mrs. Patterson, walked beside him. She was a kind woman in her 40s who'd always been friendly during school events. Mr. DeVere, what a nice surprise, she said as Lucas ran to give me a hug. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd say hello. I'm glad you did. Lucas has seemed a little unsettled lately. more withdrawn than usual. Is everything all right at home? The question confirmed my fears. If Lucas's teacher was noticing changes in his behavior, the family's stress was worse than I'd thought. There have been some adjustments, I said carefully. Mrs. Patterson nodded understandingly. Family transitions can be hard on children. If there's anything the school can do to support Lucas during this time, please let us know. Family transitions. The phrase echoed in my mind as I drove Lucas home. What kind of transitions was Lauren planning? And why was everyone except me seem to know about them? That evening, I returned to the hotel bar. I needed answers, and Ravi seemed to be the only person willing to give them to me. The young bartender looked up as I approached, his expression immediately alert. Mr. DeVere, how are you feeling? Confused, I said honestly. About last night, about the note you gave me. Ravi glanced around the bar, making sure no one was within earshot. Your daughter-in-law was here earlier this week. She was asking questions about hotel security policies, specifically about older guests who might pose safety risks. Safety risks? She mentioned concerns about memory issues, confusion, potential liability problems. She was very interested in our incident reporting procedures. My heart sank. What kind of incident reporting? If a guest were to have some kind of episode, confusion, aggression, anything that might require intervention, we're required to document it. Those reports can be subpoenaed in legal proceedings. The implication hit me like a punch to the gut. Lauren wasn't just planning to remove me from my apartment. She was building a case to justify it, creating a paper trail that would make me look incompetent or dangerous. Last night, Ravi continued, I overheard her telling her friend that you might have an episode that would need to be handled. When I saw you heading back toward the table, I realized you might be walking into some kind of setup. A setup? I don't know the details. But whatever they were planning, they wanted it to look spontaneous, natural, like you were just having problems that everyone could witness. I thought about Lauren's casual dismissals, the way she'd positioned me as the helpful but slightly addled family member. Had that been deliberate? Had she been building a narrative about my mental state for months? There's something else, Ravi said quietly. She asked about our security cameras, specifically which areas of the bar are recorded and which aren't. And? The table where you were sitting last night? Perfect camera angle. If something had happened there, it would have been captured on video. I left the bar feeling sick to my stomach. Lauren wasn't just planning to take my apartment, she was planning to destroy my reputation in the process, make me look like a confused old man who couldn't take care of himself, who needed to be managed by his more competent family members. But why? What did she gain by removing me from my home? The answer came to me as I sat in my car outside the hotel. Location. My apartment building was in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood, and property values had skyrocketed in recent years. If something happened to me, if I were declared incompetent or moved to assisted living, what would happen to my lease? I thought about the document I'd signed at Lauren's house, the insurance paperwork that might not have been insurance paperwork at all. For the first time since Margaret's passing, I felt truly afraid, not of the end itself, but of being erased while I was still here, of being written out of my own life by someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to her ambitions. But fear, I realized, could be useful. It could make you careful, it could make you smart, and it could make you fight back. The next morning, I drove to the building association office with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. If Lauren was planning something involving my housing situation, there would be a paper trail. And if there was a paper trail, I could find it. The association office was located in a small strip mall about 10 minutes from my building. Greta Malm, the association president, looked up from her desk as I entered. She was a stern woman in her early 50s, the kind of person who took property management very seriously. Mr. DeVere, what can I do for you? I wanted to check on the status of my account, make sure everything is current. Greta's expression was neutral, but I caught something in her eyes. A flicker of discomfort, maybe even guilt. Of course, let me pull up your file. As she typed on her computer, I noticed a stack of papers on her desk marked Special Vote Agenda. My heart rate quickened. Everything appears to be in order, Greta said, but her voice lacked conviction. Though I should mention, there is a special board meeting scheduled for next week. What kind of special meeting? Oh, just some routine matters, maintenance issues, policy updates, that sort of thing. She was lying. I could tell by the way she avoided eye contact, the way her fingers drummed nervously on the desk. Will it affect residents in any way? Possibly. We'll be voting on some occupancy guidelines, clarifying primary resident status for certain units. Primary resident status, the same phrase I'd seen in the document Lauren had me sign. Is this something all residents should know about? Well, it only affects a small number of units, ones where there might be questions about who the actual primary occupant is. Questions? Greta shifted uncomfortably. Sometimes family members or other parties raise concerns about a resident's ability to maintain their housing independently. When that happens, we have to review the situation. And who raised concerns about my unit? I can't discuss the specifics of ongoing proceedings. Ongoing proceedings, so it was already in motion, whatever Lauren was planning. Mrs. Malm, I've lived in that apartment for 15 years. My wife and I signed the original lease, and after she passed, I became the primary resident. What possible concerns could there be? Mr. DeVere, I really can't. Has someone filed a complaint about me? Her silence was answer enough. I left the association office feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Lauren had filed some kind of complaint, raised questions about my competency or my right to live in my own home. The special board meeting wasn't routine, it was a hearing, and I was the subject. My next stop was Carmen's office at the hotel. If anyone could help me understand the legal implications of what was happening, it would be her. Carmen looked up from her paperwork as I knocked on her open door. Her expression immediately shifted to concern when she saw my face. Frank? What's wrong? I need your help understanding something. I sat down across from her desk. If someone wanted to remove a person from their apartment, what kind of process would they have to follow? That depends on the situation. Are we talking about eviction for non-payment? Lease violations? What about incompetency? If someone claimed a resident couldn't take care of themselves? Carmen's expression darkened. That's more complicated. It would typically involve adult protective services, medical evaluations, possibly guardianship proceedings. Why are you asking? I told her everything. Lauren's behavior, the mysterious document, the HOA meeting, Greta's evasiveness. Carmen listened without interrupting, her frown deepening with each detail. Frank, do you have a copy of what you signed at Lauren's house? No, she took it with her. That's a red flag right there. Legitimate insurance documents would give you a copy for your records. Carmen pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. What exactly did the document say? Something about temporary occupancy and primary residence status. The language was confusing. It sounds like you might have signed a document transferring some kind of authority over your housing situation, possibly giving Lauren power to make decisions about your living arrangements. My stomach dropped. Can she do that? Not legally, not without proper procedures. But if she presents it to your HOA as evidence that you've agreed to alternative housing arrangements, they might approve her request to remove me. Exactly, especially if she's also filed complaints about your mental state or ability to live independently. Carmen leaned back in her chair, thinking. We need to see exactly what you signed, and we need to understand what complaints have been filed. Do you have any allies on your HOA board? I don't really know the board members. I've always just paid my fees and minded my own business. That needs to change. You need to understand the process, know your rights, and be prepared to defend yourself at this meeting. How do I do that? Carmen smiled grimly. Research, documentation, and maybe a little strategic networking. She handed me a business card. This is a friend of mine who specializes in elder law. She's seen cases like this before. Call her today. As I left Carmen's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Miles. Dad, can we talk? Lauren mentioned you seemed upset yesterday. I stared at the message, wondering how to respond. Was Miles genuinely concerned, or was this Lauren's way of gathering information about my state of mind? I decided to call him directly. Dad, thanks for calling back. Lauren said you seemed a little confused yesterday, asking a lot of questions about the paperwork. I wasn't confused, Miles. I was being careful. Right, of course. It's just... Well, Lauren's been worried about you. She thinks you might be struggling more than you're letting on. Struggling with what? You know, living alone, managing everything by yourself. She mentioned you seemed disoriented at the bar the other night. Disoriented. Another word for confused, unstable, incompetent. Miles, I left the bar because I was tired of being ignored and dismissed. That's not disorientation, that's self-respect. I know. But from the outside, it might have looked different. And Lauren's just trying to help. She's been researching senior living communities, places where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance and cooking and all that stuff. I don't want to live in a senior community. But Dad, what if something happens? What if you fall, or have a medical emergency, or forget to pay a bill? Wouldn't it be better to be somewhere with support staff? The words sounded rehearsed, like Lauren had coached him on what to say. My own son was participating in a campaign to convince me I was incompetent. Miles, I'm 62 years old, not 92. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I know you think that, but I don't think it, I know it. And I'm disappointed that you're willing to take Lauren's word over mine about my own capabilities. There was a long pause. When Miles spoke again, his voice was defensive. Lauren's just looking out for the family. She's trying to make sure everyone's safe and secure. Whose security is she really worried about, Miles? Mine or her own? What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget I said anything. After we hung up, I sat in my car feeling more alone than I had since Margaret's funeral. My own son was either completely under Lauren's influence or actively complicit in her plans. Either way, I couldn't count on him for support. That afternoon, I went to the public library and used their computers to research tenant rights and HOA procedures. What I found was both encouraging and terrifying. The encouraging part, HOA boards couldn't simply vote to remove residents without cause. There had to be legitimate violations of lease terms or community rules. The terrifying part, if a resident was deemed mentally incompetent or unable to maintain their housing safely, the board could initiate proceedings to terminate their lease, especially if family members supported the action. I printed out everything I could find about tenant protections and due process requirements. If Lauren wanted to remove me from my home, she'd have to follow proper procedures. And proper procedures meant I had rights. My phone rang as I was leaving the library. Carmen's name appeared on the screen. Frank, I did some digging into your situation. I think you need to know what we're dealing with. What did you find? I have a contact at the City Housing Authority. According to her, a complaint was filed against you 3 weeks ago, alleging unsafe living conditions and potential mental health issues affecting your ability to maintain your residence. 3 weeks ago? But I just signed that document yesterday. Which means Lauren's been planning this for a while. The document you signed might have been the final piece she needed to make her case. What kind of case? That you're voluntarily agreeing to alternative housing arrangements due to your declining mental state. Combined with the formal complaint, it creates a narrative that you're unfit to live independently. I felt sick. What can I do? Fight back. Gather evidence that you're competent and capable. Document everything Lauren has said and done. And most importantly, show up to that HOA meeting prepared to defend yourself. How do I prove I'm competent? How do you prove a negative? Medical evaluation, character witnesses, evidence of your ability to manage your affairs independently. We'll figure it out. But Frank, you need to understand, Lauren's not just trying to move you out of your apartment. If she succeeds in having you declared incompetent, it could affect your access to your bank accounts, your ability to make medical decisions, everything. The full scope of what Lauren was attempting hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about housing, it was about control. Total control over my life and assets. Carmen, what if I can't prove my competency to their satisfaction? Then you lose everything. Your home, your independence, possibly your financial autonomy. Lauren becomes your de facto guardian, making decisions about your life while you're still alive to see it happen. After we hung up, I sat in the library parking lot, staring at the stack of papers I'd printed. 3 weeks ago, Lauren had filed a complaint against me. 3 weeks ago, she'd started the process of destroying my life, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I would go quietly, that I'd be too confused or intimidated to fight back. She was wrong. For the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. Lauren might have a head start, but I had something she didn't expect. The determination of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The battle for my life was about to begin. The next morning, I called the elder law attorney Carmen had recommended. Patricia Morse had a calm, professional voice that immediately put me at ease. Mr. DeVere, Carmen filled me in on your situation. I have to tell you, what you're describing is more common than you might think. Adult children or in-laws who see elderly relatives as obstacles to inheritance or property acquisition. What are my options? First, we need to see exactly what you signed. Can you think of any way to get a copy of that document? Lauren took it with her, and I doubt she'll just hand it over if I ask. Then we'll have to be creative. In the meantime, I want you to start documenting everything. Every conversation, every interaction, every instance of Lauren treating you as incompetent. We need to build a case that this is a calculated campaign, not genuine concern for your welfare. How do I prove that? Patterns, witnesses, evidence of her real motivations. And we need to move fast. If that HOA meeting is next week, we don't have much time. After speaking with the attorney, I decided to pay Greta another visit. This time, I would be more direct. I found her in her garden behind the association office, tending to a bed of late-season roses. She looked up as I approached, her expression immediately guarded. Mr. DeVere, back so soon? Mrs. Malm, I need to ask you something directly. What exactly did my daughter-in-law tell you about me? Greta straightened, brushing dirt from her hands. I really can't discuss. Please, my housing, my entire life, is apparently at stake here. Don't I have a right to know what accusations have been made? She studied my face for a long moment, then sighed. She said you've been having memory problems. Forgetting to pay bills, leaving appliances on, getting confused about time and dates. She was worried about safety issues. And you believed her? She seemed genuinely concerned, and she had documentation. What kind of documentation? Photos of your apartment showing unsafe conditions, medical records indicating cognitive decline, a statement from your son supporting her concerns. My heart sank. Lauren had been thorough, building a comprehensive case against me. But something bothered me about Greta's list. Medical records? I haven't seen a doctor in months, and I've never been diagnosed with cognitive problems. Greta frowned. The records she showed me indicated recent evaluations for memory loss and confusion. That's impossible. I think I'd remember seeing a doctor for memory problems. Mr. DeVere, are you saying the medical records were falsified? I'm saying they couldn't be legitimate, because the medical appointments never happened. Greta's expression shifted from discomfort to concern. If that's true, then we have a serious problem. The board's decision was largely based on those medical records. Can I see them? They're confidential medical documents. But if you're claiming they're fraudulent, you might want to speak with the board's attorney. This could be a legal matter. I left Greta's garden with a new lead. Lauren had somehow obtained or created fake medical records to support her case. That was fraud, and fraud was a crime. My next stop was Jonas Feld's office. As the HOA's accountant, he would have records of all payments and financial transactions related to my account. Jonas was a quiet man in his late 40s, the kind of person who paid attention to details others missed. He looked up from his computer as I entered his small office. Mr. DeVere, what can I do for you? I wanted to review my account history, make sure all my payments are current and properly recorded. Of course. He pulled up my file and turned his monitor so I could see it. Everything looks normal until about 6 weeks ago. What happened 6 weeks ago? There was a large withdrawal from your automatic payment account. Then several late fees were assessed when your rent payment bounced. I stared at the screen in confusion. That's impossible. I never made any large withdrawals, and my rent is always paid automatically. Jonas frowned and clicked through several screens. According to the bank records, the withdrawal was authorized by someone with power of attorney over your account. I never gave anyone power of attorney. The documentation on file shows otherwise. It's signed and notarized. Another forged document. Lauren hadn't just created fake medical records, she'd also forged financial paperwork to access my accounts. Mr. Feld, can you print out all of this for me? The withdrawal records, the power of attorney documentation, everything? I suppose I could, but I think I'm the victim of fraud, and I need evidence to prove it. Jonas's expression became very serious. If that's the case, Mr. DeVere, you should know that whoever has access to your accounts has been making regular withdrawals for the past month. Small amounts, but consistent. How much are we talking about? About $1,500 total. I felt dizzy. Lauren hadn't just been planning to take my apartment. She'd already been stealing from me. Jonas printed out the financial records, his expression troubled. Mr. DeVere, if these documents are forged, the bank needs to know immediately, and you should probably contact the police. From Jonas's office, I went straight to the hotel to find Soren Nguyen, the night manager who Carmen had mentioned might be able to help with security footage. Soren was a sharp young woman who took her job seriously. When I explained what I needed, she immediately understood the implications. Mr. DeVere, if someone staged an incident to make you look unstable, it would have been captured on our cameras. Let me check the footage from that night. We went to her office and reviewed the security video from the bar. What we found was damning. The footage clearly showed Lauren and her friend Serena positioning themselves near my table before I returned from the service door. When I didn't return as expected, Lauren could be seen checking her phone repeatedly, then speaking animatedly to Serena. Look at this, Soren said, pointing to the screen. Right here, your daughter-in-law is clearly agitated that you're not coming back to the table. Whatever they had planned, your early departure ruined it. Can you make copies of this footage? Absolutely. And Mr. DeVere? You should know that your daughter-in-law came back the next day asking for copies of security footage from that night. She claimed there had been an incident involving an elderly guest who became confused and disruptive. What did you tell her? That we couldn't release footage without a police report or court order. but she was very persistent, asking specific questions about camera angles and recording quality. I left the hotel with a USB drive containing the security footage and a growing sense of outrage. Lauren's plan had been meticulous: stage an incident at the bar, record it for evidence, then use it to support her claims about my mental state. When that failed, she'd simply lied about what happened. That evening, I called Ravi to thank him for his warning and ask if he'd be willing to provide a written statement about Lauren's behavior and her questions about hotel security. Absolutely, he said without hesitation. What she was planning was wrong, and I'm glad you figured it out before it was too late. It may still be too late. The HOA meeting is in 3 days. Then we need to make sure you're prepared. I've been thinking about this, and there's something else you should know. After you left that night, your daughter-in-law stayed for another hour. She was on her phone most of the time, talking to someone about moving to Phase 2 and accelerating the timeline. Phase 2? I couldn't hear all of it, but she mentioned something about medical evaluations and emergency guardianship procedures. It sounded like removing you from your apartment was just the beginning. Emergency guardianship. The phrase sent chills down my spine. If Lauren could convince a court that I was mentally incompetent and in immediate danger, she could gain legal control over my entire life within a matter of days. I spent the next morning organizing all the evidence I'd gathered: the financial records showing unauthorized withdrawals, the security footage proving Lauren's deception, Ravi's statement about her planning, and Greta's admission about the fake medical records. But as I reviewed everything, I realized I was still missing a crucial piece: the document I'd signed at Lauren's house. Without knowing exactly what I'd agreed to, I couldn't fully understand the legal implications. That afternoon, I made a decision that felt both desperate and necessary. I called Miles. Dad, is everything okay? I need to ask you a favor, Miles. I need to see the document I signed at your house the other day. What document? The insurance paperwork Lauren had me sign. I want to make a copy for my records. There was a pause. I'm not sure where Lauren put that. Why do you need it? Because I'm starting to think it wasn't actually insurance paperwork. What do you mean? I mean, I think I signed something that gives Lauren legal authority over my housing situation, and I want to know exactly what I agreed to. Dad, you're being paranoid. Lauren's trying to help you. Then you won't mind showing me what I signed. Another pause, longer this time. Let me talk to Lauren and get back to you. He never called back. That evening, as I sat in my apartment reviewing my evidence one more time, my phone buzzed with a notification from Lauren's Instagram account. Curious, I opened it to find a new post: a photo of a beautiful senior living facility with the caption, "Sometimes the hardest decisions are the most loving ones. Excited to help a special family member transition to a safer, more supportive environment. Family first. Tough choices. Senior care." The post had dozens of likes and comments praising Lauren for her compassion and dedication to family. Reading through them, I felt a surge of fury unlike anything I'd experienced since Margaret's passing. Lauren wasn't just stealing my home and my money, she was turning it into content for her social media brand, positioning herself as the devoted daughter-in-law making sacrifices for her elderly relative. But her arrogance had given me something valuable: a public admission of her plans. She was so confident in her success that she was already celebrating online. I screenshot the post and added it to my evidence file. Then I called Patricia Morse, the attorney. Ms. Morse, the HOA meeting is tomorrow night. Are you ready? As ready as we can be, given the time constraints. You've done excellent work gathering evidence, Frank. Lauren's overconfidence may be her downfall. What happens if the board votes to remove me anyway? Then we file an immediate injunction and take this to court. But I don't think it will come to that. You have enough evidence to expose Lauren's fraud, and once the board sees what really happened, they'll have no choice but to dismiss her complaint. And if they don't, then we fight. But Frank, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that your relationship with your son and grandson may not survive this. Sometimes doing the right thing comes at a personal cost. I thought about Lucas, about the confused look in his eyes when he'd asked why I always looked sad in their kitchen. Would he understand why I'd had to fight his mother? Would Miles ever forgive me for exposing Lauren's crimes? But then I thought about Margaret, about the life we'd built together, about the dignity she'd want me to maintain. Some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. Tomorrow night, I would walk into that boardroom and take back my life. Lauren had underestimated me for the last time. The morning of the HOA meeting, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Today, everything would be decided. Either I would successfully defend my home and my dignity, or Lauren would succeed in destroying both. I spent the morning organizing my evidence one final time, creating a presentation that would systematically dismantle every aspect of Lauren's case. Patricia Morse had coached me on how to present the information calmly and factually, letting the evidence speak for itself. At noon, Carmen called to check on me. "How are you feeling, Frank?" "Surprisingly calm. Either I'm prepared or I'm in denial." "You're prepared. I've seen the evidence you've gathered. It's comprehensive and damning. Lauren won't be able to explain away fraud and theft. What if the board doesn't care? What if they just want to avoid controversy and vote to remove me anyway? Then we take it to court. But Frank, I don't think that's going to happen. You've built an airtight case, and you have witnesses. The truth has a way of winning out." After lunch, I drove to the bank to make one final addition to my evidence file. I'd requested copies of all transactions on my accounts for the past 2 months, and the records clearly showed the pattern of unauthorized withdrawals that had started immediately after Lauren gained access to my accounts. The bank manager, a woman named Sandra Walsh, reviewed the records with me. "Mr. DeVere, these transactions were definitely not authorized by you. I never gave anyone permission to access my accounts, and I never signed a legitimate power of attorney. Then this is clearly fraud, and we need to freeze the accounts immediately to prevent further unauthorized access. Can you provide a written statement confirming that these withdrawals were made without my authorization?" "Absolutely. And Mr. DeVere, you should file a police report. This isn't just a family dispute, it's theft." As I left the bank with Sandra's statement and the frozen account documentation, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "Grandpa Frank, Mom said you might not be at dinner Sunday. Are you going away?" The innocent question broke my heart. Lucas had no idea what his mother was planning, no understanding that his grandfather was fighting for his life against his own family. I texted back, "I'm not going anywhere, buddy. See you Sunday." At 4 o'clock, Miles called. "Dad, we need to talk before tonight's meeting." "What about?" "Lauren thinks you're going to make a scene, embarrass the family. She's worried about your mental state." "My mental state is fine, Miles. What should worry you is your wife's criminal behavior." "Criminal? Dad, you're being dramatic. Lauren's trying to help you." "By stealing $1,500 from my bank account? By forging medical records? By staging incidents to make me look incompetent? What are you talking about?" I realized Miles genuinely didn't know the extent of Lauren's actions. She'd been manipulating him as much as she'd been manipulating me. "Miles, your wife has been systematically stealing from me and building a fraudulent case to have me declared incompetent. I have evidence of everything." "That's impossible. Lauren wouldn't." "Come to the meeting tonight. See the evidence for yourself. Then decide whether you want to support a criminal or your father." There was a long silence. When Miles spoke again, his voice was uncertain. "Dad, if what you're saying is true, it is true, and after tonight everyone will know it." An hour before the meeting, I received an unexpected visitor. Lucas stood at my door with his school backpack, looking worried. "Grandpa Frank, Mom and Dad are fighting, and I don't want to be there. Can I stay with you?" My heart ached for him. "Of course, buddy. Come in." As Lucas settled on my couch with his homework, I wondered if this would be the last time he'd visit my apartment. If Lauren's plan succeeded, this home would be gone, and our relationship might be destroyed in the process. "Grandpa Frank?" Lucas looked up from his math worksheet. "Are you and Mom mad at each other?" "It's complicated, Lucas. Sometimes adults disagree about important things. Mom said you don't want help, even when you need it. She said that makes you stubborn." "What do you think? Do I seem like I need help taking care of myself?" Lucas looked around my apartment. Clean, organized, well-maintained. "You seem fine to me. Better than Dad, actually. He can't even make coffee without burning it." Despite everything, I smiled. "That's between you and me, okay?" "Okay, but Grandpa Frank, whatever happens, I think you're the smartest grown-up I know. Don't let anyone tell you you're not." The simple faith in his voice nearly broke me. I hugged him tightly, knowing that in a few hours, everything would change. At 6:30, I walked Lucas back to his house. Lauren answered the door, her expression icy. "Lucas, go to your room. Frank, I hope you've reconsidered making trouble tonight." "I've reconsidered a lot of things, Lauren, like trusting you." "I don't know what you think you know, but I know about the forged power of attorney. I know about the stolen money. I know about the fake medical records. Should I continue?" For the first time since I'd known her, Lauren looked genuinely rattled. "You're confused, Frank. You signed those documents yourself." "We'll see what the board thinks about that." As I walked away, I heard Lauren on her phone behind me. "We have a problem. He knows more than we thought." At 7 o'clock, I arrived at the community center where the HOA meeting was being held. The parking lot was fuller than usual. Word had apparently spread that something dramatic was going to happen. Inside, I found a seat in the back row and surveyed the room. Greta sat at the front table with two other board members I didn't recognize. Jonas was there with his financial records. Soren from the hotel had come to provide testimony about the security footage. Ravi sat near the middle, ready to give his statement about Lauren's behavior at the bar. And there, in the front row, sat Lauren and Miles. Lauren looked confident, almost smug, as she chatted with the board members. Miles looked uncomfortable, glancing back at me with an expression I couldn't read. Patricia Morse slipped into the seat beside me. Ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, let the evidence do the talking. Stay calm, stick to the facts, and let Lauren's own actions convict her. At 7:15, Greta called the meeting to order. We're here tonight to address a complaint filed regarding the occupancy status of Unit 4B, currently occupied by Franklin DeVere. The complaint alleges that Mr. DeVere is no longer capable of maintaining independent residence due to cognitive decline and safety concerns. She looked directly at me. Mr. DeVere, you have the right to respond to these allegations and present evidence in your defense. I stood up, my folder of evidence in hand. Around the room, I could feel the tension as people waited to see what would happen next. This was it, the moment everything would be decided. Thank you, Mrs. Malm. I have quite a bit to say. Lauren's confident smile faltered slightly as I walked to the front of the room. The battle for my life was about to begin. I stood at the front of the room, looking out at the assembled crowd. Lauren sat in the front row, her expression a mixture of confidence and growing concern. Miles beside her looked increasingly uncomfortable. In the back, I could see Carmen, who had arrived to provide moral support, and scattered throughout the room were the faces of neighbors I'd known for years. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm here tonight because my daughter-in-law has filed a complaint claiming I'm mentally incompetent and unable to live independently. She's asked this board to remove me from my home of 15 years based on allegations of cognitive decline and safety concerns. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. I'm here to show you that every single allegation in her complaint is not only false, but criminally fraudulent. A murmur ran through the room. Lauren's face had gone pale. Let's start with the medical records that were submitted to support this complaint. I handed copies to each board member. According to Mrs. Malm, these records indicate recent evaluations for memory loss and confusion. The problem is, these medical appointments never happened. I pulled out my phone and showed the board my calendar app. As you can see, I keep detailed records of all my appointments. There are no medical visits on the dates listed in these supposed records. Furthermore, I contacted Dr. Harrison's office, the doctor allegedly conducting these evaluations, and they have no record of me as a patient. Greta frowned as she examined the documents. Are you saying these medical records are fabricated? I'm saying they're completely fake. Someone created false medical documents to support a fraudulent complaint. Lauren stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Frank, you're clearly confused about your medical history. This is exactly the kind of behavior we're concerned about. Sit down, Lauren. The steel in my voice surprised even me. You'll have your chance to speak. I turned back to the board. The medical fraud is just the beginning. Mrs. DeVere also submitted financial documents claiming to have power of attorney over my accounts. Here's the problem with that claim. I handed Jonas a set of bank records. Mr. Feld, as the HOA's accountant, you're familiar with power of attorney documentation. Could you examine the signature on this supposed power of attorney and compare it to my actual signature on file with the HOA? Jonas studied the documents for several minutes, then looked up with a grave expression. The signatures don't match. Furthermore, this power of attorney document lacks the proper notarization and witness requirements for legal validity. Thank you. Now, using that fraudulent power of attorney, someone has been systematically stealing from my bank accounts for the past 6 weeks. The total amount stolen is approximately $1,500. I handed Sandra Walsh's statement to the board. This is a written confirmation from my bank manager that these withdrawals were made without my authorization and that the power of attorney used to access my accounts is fraudulent. The room was completely silent now. Lauren had sunk back into her chair, her confident demeanor evaporating. But the fraud doesn't stop there, I continued. Mrs. DeVere also attempted to stage an incident at the hotel bar to create evidence of my supposed mental instability. Soren stood up from her seat. I'm Soren Nguyen, night manager at the Grandview Hotel. I have security footage that shows Mrs. DeVere and her friend positioning themselves to record what appears to be a planned incident involving Mr. DeVere. When he left early, Mrs. DeVere can be seen on camera expressing frustration that their plan had failed. I nodded to Soren, who connected her laptop to the room's projection system. The security footage played on the wall, clearly showing Lauren and Serena's suspicious behavior, their repeated glances toward the service door, and Lauren's agitation when I didn't return to the table. The next day, Soren continued, Mrs. DeVere returned to the hotel requesting copies of security footage from that night, claiming there had been an incident involving an elderly guest who became confused and disruptive. No such incident occurred. Ravi stood up from his seat in the middle of the room. I'm Ravi Varick, bartender at the hotel. I witnessed Mrs. DeVere's behavior that night and overheard her planning what she called Phase 2 of her operation against Mr. DeVere. She specifically asked me about our incident reporting procedures and which areas of the bar were covered by security cameras. He pulled out a notarized statement. I've documented everything I witnessed, including Mrs. DeVere's statement that Mr. DeVere was going to have an episode that would need to be handled. Lauren finally found her voice. This is all taken out of context. I was trying to help Frank, trying to make sure he got the care he needs. By stealing from him? Patricia Morse had stood up from the back of the room. I'm Patricia Morse, Mr. DeVere's attorney. What we've documented here tonight isn't family concern. It's elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit guardianship fraud. She addressed the board directly. Mrs. DeVere's plan was to have Mr. DeVere declared incompetent based on fabricated evidence, then use emergency guardianship procedures to gain control of his assets while moving him into a facility where she could continue to exploit him financially. Miles had been sitting in stunned silence, but now he stood up, his face pale. Lauren, is this true? Did you really steal from my father? Lauren's composure finally cracked. Miles, you don't understand. Your father is sitting on a valuable apartment in a prime location. Property values in this area have tripled in the past 5 years. If something happened to him, if he was moved to assisted living, we could... You could what? Miles's voice was rising. Profit from his misfortune? Cash in on his passing? I was thinking about our future, about Lucas's college fund. Your father doesn't need all that space, and he won't live forever anyway. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Lauren had just admitted, in front of dozens of witnesses, that her motivation was financial gain. Greta banged her gavel for order. Mrs. DeVere, are you admitting that your complaint against Mr. DeVere was motivated by financial considerations rather than genuine concern for his welfare? Lauren looked around the room, finally realizing how badly she'd miscalculated. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, I said quietly. You saw my apartment as an asset you could acquire by having me declared incompetent. When I wouldn't cooperate with your timeline, you decided to force the issue through fraud and theft. I turned to address the entire room. For months, I've been made to feel like a burden, like someone who was in the way of more important people's plans. I've been dismissed, ignored, and treated like I was already mentally incompetent. But I want everyone here to see what real incompetence looks like. I gestured toward Lauren. Real incompetence is thinking you can commit multiple felonies without consequences. Real incompetence is confessing to your crimes in front of witnesses. Real incompetence is destroying your family's reputation for a few $1,000s in stolen money. Jonas cleared his throat. I need to inform the board that based on tonight's revelations, I'll be filing a report with the police regarding the fraudulent financial documents and unauthorized account access. This is a criminal matter now. Greta looked shaken as she consulted with the other board members. After a brief, whispered conference, she addressed the room. In light of the evidence presented tonight, the board unanimously rejects the complaint against Mr. DeVere. Furthermore, we're referring this matter to law enforcement for investigation of potential criminal fraud. She looked directly at Lauren. Mrs. DeVere, you are hereby banned from all future HOA meetings and prohibited from filing any further complaints regarding Mr. DeVere's residency. Any attempt to contact Mr. DeVere or interfere with his housing situation will be considered harassment. The room erupted in applause. I felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly knocked me over. I had won. Not just the fight for my apartment, but the fight for my dignity and my life. Lauren stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. This isn't over, Frank. You think you're so smart, but you're still just a lonely old man with no one who really cares about you. Actually, a small voice said from the back of the room, I care about him. Everyone turned to see Lucas standing in the doorway, his teacher, Mrs. Patterson, beside him. He walked through the crowd toward me, his young face serious. Grandpa Frank, I heard what Mom did. I'm sorry she was mean to you. I knelt down to his level. my eyes burning with tears I'd been holding back all evening. "It's not your fault, Lucas. None of this is your fault. I know. But I want you to know that I think you're brave for standing up to her. And I don't care what she says. You're not lonely. You have me." The simple declaration from my 10-year-old grandson broke something loose in my chest. I hugged him tightly as the room around us began to clear. Miles approached us slowly, his expression devastated. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Lauren was... I never thought she was capable of..." "I know, son. She fooled both of us. What happens now?" "Now you decide whether you want to be married to a criminal, and I decide whether I can forgive you for choosing her word over mine." Miles looked at his son, then at his wife, who was gathering her things with shaking hands. "Dad, I want to make this right, whatever it takes." "It's going to take time, Miles, and it's going to require you to be a better father to Lucas than you were a son to me tonight." As people filed out of the room, Carmen approached with a satisfied smile. "Well done, Frank. Margaret would be proud." Patricia Morse shook my hand. "I'll be in touch about the criminal charges. With the evidence we have, the district attorney will definitely want to prosecute." Ravi and Soren both stopped to say goodbye, promising to testify if needed. Greta apologized profusely for not investigating Lauren's claims more thoroughly before scheduling the hearing. Finally, it was just me, Lucas, and Miles in the empty room. Lauren had left without saying another word. "Grandpa Frank," Lucas said, "can we go back to your apartment? I want to see your pictures of Grandma Margaret again." "Of course we can, buddy." As we walked out into the cool night air, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The battle was over, and I had not only survived, but prevailed. Lauren had underestimated me one last time. She'd thought I was just a lonely old man with no fight left in him. Instead, she'd discovered that the quiet, methodical engineer who'd spent 40 years solving complex problems was more than capable of dismantling her elaborate fraud. 6 months later, Lauren pleaded guilty to elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy charges. She received 2 years in prison and was ordered to pay full restitution. Miles filed for divorce and gained full custody of Lucas. My grandson visits every Sunday now, and we cook dinner together while he tells me about school and his friends. Miles and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship, though it will never be quite the same. I still live in my apartment, the one Lauren tried so hard to take from me. Every morning when I wake up in the home I shared with Margaret, I'm reminded that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with force or aggression, but with truth, courage, and the determination to stand up for what's right. Lauren was wrong about one thing. I'm not lonely. I have my memories, my dignity, and the love of a grandson who thinks his grandfather is brave. And sometimes that's more than enough.